The next game on the list is yet another sports game, but this time by a well-famous or infamous gaming studio, EA Sports. And their first game on the system was not a Madden Football game, but instead a golf game. And that is game number 12, PGA Tour 96. One of the company's most recognized series for the time, and is the fourth installment of a formal long-running series. Published by EA Sports and developed by Hitman Productions. You play a game of golf, either by yourself or a friend, to compete in a match of who would win enough holes. You choose only 2 golf fields in the entire game, that are TPC River Highlands, located in Cornwall, Connecticut, and Spyglass Hill, located in Pebble Beach, California. Both of them are based on real locations. Then after that, you choose 13 professional players that were popular golfers back in the mid-90s, which the names are Billy Andrade, Chip Beck, Brad Faxon, Jim Gallagher Jr., Peter Jacobson, Lee Jensen, Tom Kite, Bruce LIETZKE, Davis Love III, Andrew McGee, Mark O'Mara, Jeff Slunman, Craig Stadler, and Fuzzy Zoeller. After that, you have the option to change modes like skins, shootout, and strokes. Once you have everything set up what you wanted, you enter either practice or tournament, and let the golf match begin. Although there's little to no development about the game, but we'll talk about its history of the game and its series beginnings. It all started when Electronic Arts wanted to have a couple sports titles after the success of the first Madden game back in 1988, simply known as John Madden Football. So what did EA think of next? How about a golf game? And thus, the agreement between EA and PGA made a deal. Now, for the development of it, they went to an American development company, Sterling Silver Software, and asked 2 people who formed the company, Dennis Coble and Lee Actor, to make a golf game for the MS-DOS. Both of them agreed. When the first PGA Tour Golf was released in 1990 for the MS-DOS, it received good ratings and several critics considering it the best golf game available at the time of its release. Then a year later, they would soon start to port to other home computers like the Amiga and Macintosh versions, and of course, home consoles like the SNES, Master System, Game Gear, and the most famous port out of all of them, Sega Genesis, due to the fact that it was superior to all the console versions. But also, it was running on 3D polygonal graphics and shading textures on the Genesis without any process chip or even a Sega virtual processor, since it wasn't made yet until 1994. And even placed at number 10 on its list of top Mega Drive games of all time. Even though the graphics for the Genesis and mostly the rest of the home ports and the computer ports did not age well over the years, but keep in mind, it was revolutionary back in the early 90s and for the time looked amazing. Eventually, Dennis and Lee changed the company's name to Polygon Games or Polygames, due that they could make 3D polygonal games. And EA formed a new subdivision that we all know to love or hate, EA Sports. Sooner and after the first, they would make sequels exclusive to home consoles, to be more specifically the Genesis, which is PGA Tour Golf 2 released in 1992, which improved on the graphics and effects from the original. Then there was PGA Tour Golf 3 released in 1994, which is the best one out of all the previous 16-bit entries, and once again, improved on the graphics and effects. And finally, in the same year was a spin-off title called PGA European Tour, which mostly plays the same, but feels different overall. which was released for not just the Genesis, but the Amiga, Amiga CD32, SNES, and Game Boy, which surprisingly enough was the best version out of all of them because GamePro gave it a rave review saying that it delivers almost everything that made the 16-bit relative the best. But also, if you played on the Super Game Boy, the game looks almost good as the Genesis version. So, saying that these guys could make a good golfing games for the 16-bit consoles, naturally they would enter the 32-bit consoles and create the next game, right? Well, not exactly. Why? Because EA shifted series development in-house after both PGA Tour 3 and PGA European Tour, according to Lee. So basically, EA told the creators they would no longer have the IP to the series and forced to quit afterwards. You could say it was a ballsy move for a gaming company to do that, but that's just typical EA for you, since they have made so many awful and terrible decisions back in the past and still do in present day. And also cared about money. As for the creators of the series, Lee Actor left gaming development and focused more on composing music, and Dennis Coble went on to work as a video game industry consultant. After that whole debacle of the original creators left the series, EA heard about Sony's new console, the PlayStation, and EA wanted to have 3 of the most popular sports titles at the time, which are PGA Tour 96, which is the first in the series to feature a yearly number, FIFA Soccer 96, which we will talk more about it later on, and Madden NFL 96, which was originally supposed to be released somewhere either September or October. But only 2 out of the 3 titles were released by EA Sports. The only one that ultimately got the shaft is Madden NFL 96, due that it was unfinished, had some buggy issues, and can't be finished on time due that the Madden series had a strict deadline of releasing its games during seasonal plays. Thus, the PlayStation version was ultimately cancelled. Even though the back of the PGA Tour 96 manual does show that it was coming soon, but never hit retail. But we did get Madden NFL 97 a year later, but more on that in the future. And finally, for the development of the game, instead of just asking one development team, they asked 5 development teams to create the game to several ports, like Polygames did the SNES version, which was the last game they ever made for the series before shutting down their studios in the late 90s. Unexpected Development, who did the Game Boy version, which is the best of the handheld version, Cirrus Software, who did the Game Gear version, which is the worst of the handheld version, New FX, which did both the Genesis and 3DO version, which they did a fine job on these ports, both 16 and 32-bit hardware, and finally the one who did the PlayStation port, Hitman Productions, which was a new development studio at the time. When the PlayStation version was released in North America in September 23rd, 1995, Europe in November 1st, 1995, and Japan in February 23rd, 1996, it received some generally alright reviews. Electronic Gaming Monthly's 2 sports reviewers gave the PlayStation version scores of 8.5 and 9.0 out of 10, remarking that it retained the excellent aspects of the previous games in the series while dramatically improving on the graphics. And GamePro, although criticized it for having only 2 courses, but highly praised the precise level of control over each shot, selection of players, 3-dimensional terrain, and digitalized sprites. But Maximum called it the weakest of the series yet. While they too approved of the ability to control every aspect of each shot, they felt that the game was ruined by the unrealistic ball physics, particularly that the ball stops dead with almost no rolling when they hit the ground, and that putted balls stop suddenly instead of gradually slowing. And Next Generation, although approved of the game for its easy interface and numerous play options, but the graphics to be a little on the underwhelming side by the standards of current generation consoles. So, what they're saying at the very end is that it's an okay title for the series. Not the best, but decent for a golf game. And as for the series' continuation after PGA Tour 96, we will discuss about it in the future. For now, let's stick to reviewing right now. The graphics are meh. Even though the graphics for the series had improved on and kept on it in the sequels, but for 1995, it looks very pixelated, and the digitalized models for the characters do come off weird or funny looking, and doesn't match the style of the background scenery. But the character animation is actually good, so I do give some credit on it. The presentation is alright, like showing FMV videos of the two golf parks, and even the character bios of them winning a game that they won over the years. And most of them are kinda funny, including Stadler, with him trying to get the golf ball out of the bush. Yeah, I know RetroPals did a joke on it, but just wanted to mention it. And the swing meter bar is okay, and have some nice shading to it, but talk more in a few minutes. The music is okay. Honestly, I'm not that huge of a fan of 90s cliché cheesy music, but did like the slower tunes of the soundtrack, feeling this gentle vibe of being in the park with some fresh air. So all I can say that it's a decent soundtrack. And at last, the gameplay. It's okay. I mean, what do you want me to say about it? It's just another golf game. All I could say about the controls that it plays at least a decent pace, and the movement of which place you want your ball to land is fine. But what I could say that it's one of the first home console games that used a swing meter, which was a new thing back in the day, and would be used in future titles, and also impact the golf genre using this new mechanic. So at least that's something, I guess. But now on to the conclusion. The game is at least decent. It was a big improvement going to 16-bit hardware to 32-bit hardware, and had an alright reviews back in its heyday, but when time passes on, you could see that the graphics did not age well and feels dated, except for the digitalized character animation. The presentation and music are good, and in my opinion the main highlight of the game. And finally, the game plays alright and decent too. Nuff said. If you're a huge golfing fan and want to discover the past of 90s golfing, then I sort of recommend this game, but if not, either the Genesis PGA games by Polygames, or the follow-ups afterward. I may not be a golf enthusiast, or like I said before, a sports fan, but it's safe to say that it's at least passable and decent. I give my official rating a 3 out of 6. Next time on the PlayStation years, we're returning to Crystal Dynamics with another game that was also a 3DO port. Play much similar to Total Eclipse Turbo, but with a different twist, and was the first game to receive an M for mature rating for the PlayStation in North America. What is that game? Well, I'll tell you in the next review. Thanks for watching.